Welcome back to the Afinida Insurance podcast. We're really excited to talk about all things workers' compensation insurance this month. I have Alyssa Wilcox and Victoria Cowart with me today, and they are going to help walk us through everything that comes with workers' comp and the insurance that follows it. All right, Alyssa, diving into our first question, and it's probably the most frequent because people always want to know how much things are going to cost and how those things are determined. So one of the most frequently asked questions is, how are workers' compensation premiums calculated?
Ultimately, what is it going to cost me? So workers' comp, there's two factors that go into calculating the premium. The first is the rate in the class code that's assigned to your employees. So this will be determined by your operations. So roofers are going to be way more expensive than somebody who's working in an office sitting behind a desk. So there's bureaus that regulate the class codes associated with your operations, and then the states themselves and the carriers individually have rates that align with those class codes. So you're assigned, let's just keep it simple, we're working in an office, so we're a clerical, we have a low rate, and then the carrier, the premium is then calculated based on the total payroll for all employees working in that office. And the one thing that's important to note about workers' comp is that you will always have a final audit at the end of the policy period. It's great to say I have one employee who makes $50,000, but if you in reality have 10 employees making 10 times that, the carrier is going to want to collect the premium for those actual wage exposures. And because workers' comp is so heavily regulated, every policy will always include a final audit, which it's not scary. It's really easy. It's just working with your payroll company, but it's part of the policy requirements.
Very good to know, and reach out to an agent if that's more confusing because they can help walk you through it. All right, Victoria, can you talk a little bit about how pay-as-you-go workers' comp kind of works and why it might be more beneficial for a business to go that direction?
I love pay-as-you-go options for work comp. So it's a system where basically every month you are submitting a report for how much payroll you've had for all of the classifications that you have. I love it because, as Alyssa said, at the end of the year, you're always going to have an audit. This is a really good way to just basically avoid any surprises and keep everything really accurate throughout the year. And it's really good because depending on your type of business, you might have a really high rate of, hiring and firing throughout the year, even on a monthly basis. So this just really makes it a lot more accurate for the employer to report and pay instead of, like I said, getting that surprise at the end of the year where you thought, oh, I'm only going to pay this person $30,000 for the year. And then you ended up hiring a couple of more people and you paid out $120,000 and you get hit with that additional premium. So it's a really good option.
So is it sort of, would you say it's the equivalent of, like paying your taxes like quarterly versus like waiting all the way to the end of the year and like paying them all at one time?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
And I like to think of it too as like you're kind of, capitalizing on your cash flow throughout the year. So if you have like a seasonal increase where you have to hire in a bunch of employees, you're bringing in more income, you're paying out your expenses at that time, and instead of at the end of the year.
What is the employer's liability on a workers' compensation policy? Melissa, I'll let you kind of give your take, and then Victoria, if you want to kind of add to that.
So workers' comp, of course, we think of it as covering for any employee injuries that happen through the course of the work. The employer's liability further protects a business from third-party lawsuits. For example, if your employee is severely injured and disabled, God forbid they die, their spouse has the right and opportunity to bring a lawsuit against you for damage and injuries to their family. And so that is what this employer's liability protects you against. It's those third-party lawsuits from people who are associated with your employees, don't work directly for you, but still have injury or losses due to any claims that may come up.
I do want to point out it's not always included with a workers' compensation policy. There are certain states called monopolistic states where you have to buy that coverage separately. Yes, you just always want to make sure that you're working with an agent that is going to, review your policy and let you know if that's included or not so that you can make sure you're covered for that.
Anything else that business owners should keep in mind when it comes to workers' compensation insurance that we haven't covered?
The number one key with workers' comp is as soon as you hire one employee, you need workers' comp. As an owner, you can exempt yourself from workers' comp. You would just use your own personal health insurance to cover any injuries you have. But as soon as you have an employee, in most states it's required, but really you just need to get workers' comp because God forbid something happens. You don't want to have that, the stress of the finances, but also the emotional toll of, oh my gosh, I hired this employee and now their life has changed,
Yeah, for sure.
Over the years, I've definitely worked with some interesting people. Honesty is key with work comp. Just be honest and upfront about your payroll, your employees, the scope of work they're doing so that they are properly covered. And just honesty is key.
Honesty is key. Got it.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for y'all's expertise as always. Thanks for joining us for this episode of our Asked and Answered series. You can find more on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next month for another one.
over the years, I've definitely worked with some interesting people. Honesty is key with work comp. Just be honest and upfront about your payroll, your employees, the scope of work they're doing, so that they are properly covered. And
Well, thanks so much for y'all's expertise as always. Thanks for joining us for this episode of our Asked and Answered series. You can find more on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next month for another one.